I'd like to start out just being completely honest with you, and that I love being a pastor. And I've loved being a pastor at Eliot Church. And, to be honest, at this point in time, right here, right now, I'm not sure if I'm called to be a pastor in a church setting. You see, each of us has what I call a calling, something that we are passionate about, something that our life experiences have prepared us to do, something that if we were financially secure enough, we would probably do without any pay or compensation. And so when I think about vocation, I usually ask myself two questions. What calling have my own unique life experiences prepared me to do? And where does my great joy meet the world's great need? From Frederick Buechner's quote of your life's vocation is where your greatest joy meets the world's greatest need. And I always ask myself those two questions. Now in 2002, I discerned that I was called to seminary. I was in between my first and second year in Belize at the time. And I was taking a week-long silent retreat, and I really wanted to think about what was next after these 2 years of teaching high school and living in community. And I came to peace with seminary as the next step. But I didn't know where I was going to go from seminary. I didn't know what form of ministry seminary would lead me to. And so seminary was really more kind of experimental for me than anything. Each of my 4 years at seminary, I had two different stints at two different churches, and I tried out prison chaplaincy. I did a unit of clinical pastoral education, so got experience as a hospital chaplain. But none of those experiences screamed to me calling. But I wasn't sure what to do really, because almost everybody else at seminary was on the track to becoming a pastor. It was kind of the path that was laid before us, so to speak. But, in January 2006, I started to get a couple hints as I was listening more and more about what made my heart sing in ministry. And in January 2006, one of those two experiences was at a New Year's retreat that I was at with Neil Donald Walsh and the Conversations with God Foundation. And I was doing a lot of meditating, a lot of journaling, and I'd actually like to share one journal entry that I wrote during that retreat. So this is from January 2006 on a retreat in Oregon. Wow, what an inspiration. This whole retreat, I've been coming to greater and greater clarity about what I really want. I want to bridge the gap between Christianity and conversations with God. I want people to see at core the inherent oneness of these two paths. That is why I've been struggling for so long at seminary. I have such a strong relationship to Jesus, and I love Jesus very much. But the Jesus I often hear about is not a Jesus I would be interested in being in relationship with. In many Christian circles, the Jesus of agape love and service is turned into a Jesus of fire, brimstone, and judgment. I can't blame people for turning away from Christianity. They've simply followed their heart. In a way, I'm glad that people have chosen to stay true to their beliefs about Jesus and God, even though it meant turning away from the church. Too many people have simply accepted somebody else's truth, even though they know that truth does not resonate with their deepest self and innermost truth. I know that I have two books in mind, one about Belize and one about Haiti. Both of those feel really good. Both of those books are what I really want right now, and I have no plan to write a third. As a side note, nothing has been done with those two books. All throughout this retreat, though, it has become clear that the content of this third book is where I feel called now. I feel so rooted in and so grateful toward all of Christianity. Every single Christian community I've been a part of has helped me to go deeper into my faith and spiritual life. Without these Christian communities and teachings, I would not be where I am today. But while I'm grateful to the Christian communities and the love, support, and challenge they have offered me, I've also not felt fully at peace with them. Some ideas about God and life have just not made sense to me. They have not resonated with my highest and best self. So while I am rooted in my Christian faith, I want to go beyond the theologies that have not served me and those which have not served a good portion of the human race. At this retreat, I started off thinking that my intention was to give Christianity back to itself. Yesterday, I realized this is inaccurate. I didn't want to give Christianity back to Christianity. I wanted to give Christianity back to Jesus. Christianity has had its share of flaws. Many people look at its history and see more shame than beauty, and yet throughout all of it, and throughout all the changes of the church, one foundation has remained constant: Jesus. No matter how much Christian communities have become corrupted or fallen into fear or violence, they have always come back to Jesus. Jesus has been at the center of it all, and rightly so. Jesus was an extraordinary person who, in the span of a 30-year lifetime, changed the face of the earth. Talk about the power of one. Over the years, since my time in Belize and Haiti, I have grown closer and closer to Jesus. At times, I have felt dissatisfied with the Christian church and so wanted to leave and go someplace else. Yet for all the faults of the Christian church, I don't want to give up on it. I don't want to abandon Jesus. My connection to him is too strong. And so, when this idea first popped into my mind of giving Christianity back to Jesus, the idea immediately resonated with me. So that's why I'm here. So, let me give you a little context for those words and really what I mean by giving Christianity back to Jesus. Some of you were here in the fall when I shared a little bit about my experience when I was in Belize at Open Door Believers Chapel, which is the church where LaToya and I first met. And, Open Door was this amazing community that I was a part of in Belize, where I experienced worship and singing. I experienced profundity and depth that I had never experienced before in community. And I experienced a welcome and a fellowship that was just amazing and incredible. But at the same time, I didn't resonate with a lot of the beliefs that were part of Open Door, whether they were about the role of woman or about beliefs about people of other faiths, or beliefs about people who were gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, beliefs about God and Jesus. The list goes on and on. So I experienced this disconnect between feeling very open-hearted in some respects, but I couldn't really, I had to check my mind at the door in some respects. And so when I got back to the States and entered seminary, I really had this newfound appreciation for the United Church of Christ, because I resonated with a lot more of the beliefs and the theology. And yet, when I started doing my student ministry in UCC churches, I didn't feel the same joy and passion and profundity and depth that I had felt in worship and in fellowship and in song in Belize. And so that was a loss for me. And I feel like, as a result of that, and I'm not alone in this observation, that a lot of people feel like they have to check one of two things at the door when they enter church. They have to leave their mind or leave their heart. And I think people long for a community where they can bring their whole self, where they can bring their mind and their heart, open mind, open heart, open hands, and anything less than that feels incomplete. And so, out of that feeling, out of that desire, in 2006, I felt this calling to give Christianity back to Jesus. Because I feel like Jesus embodied those three openness of mind and heart and hands. I felt a call to write that book, and after that I felt a call to share monthly reflections. And though I felt called to share this kind of message of giving Christianity back to Jesus through writing, it's kind of been to my surprise and sometimes frustration that really no doors have opened for me in the writing sphere. And that's okay. I'm kind of at peace with that right now. And I'm just kind of going with the process. And I hope that one day, with enough hard work and through God's grace, maybe some doors will open for me to be able to give Christianity back to Jesus through writing. But, so though doors haven't opened for me in terms of writing, doors have begun to fling open in terms of retreats. So I've got an interesting relationship with retreats. As I mentioned, in 2002, it was at a silent retreat that I was at in Belize that I felt called to go to seminary. It was at a New Year's retreat in 2006 that I felt called to give Christianity back to Jesus. And many of you may not know that it was at a New Year's retreat in 2003 that I first talked to LaToya. You see, it was interesting. It was about a year and a half into my time in Belize, and the church was going on a New Year's retreat to this place up north called Camalote. And so everybody would meet at the church, take a couple buses up to this retreat center. So, got to the church, got on the bus, and I sat next to this young woman named LaToya. And, I didn't know it at the time, but I'd actually taken the seat of her younger brother, Derek. But she was gracious enough that she didn't ask me to move or tell me to, go someplace else. And so for the hour-plus ride up to this retreat center, we had this amazing conversation. I felt this really special connection, such that even though the Jesuit volunteer organization really discouraged us, they didn't prohibit us, but they strongly discouraged us from getting into romantic relationships during our volunteer stint, I said, I have to see if something special is there. And sure enough, something special was there. And 3 wedding services later, here we are. You can ask Latoya about that after the service, if you don't know. So I have a special relationship with being a participant in retreats, but it was kind of almost by accident that I started leading retreats. It was my second year at seminary, and one of my fellow seminarians asked me, she said, hey, how would you feel about leading some confirmation retreats through the Mass Conference, United Church of Christ? I didn't really know what to expect, but I said, sure, that sounds like a good idea. And so in January 2006, that same month that I had that New Year's retreat, where I felt called to give Christianity back to Jesus, I led my first confirmation retreat. And it was really amazing and powerful and transformative. And so 3 years later, some of the confirmation retreat facilitators and I were feeling called again. And we said, so many adults have come up to us and they said, man, you should do these retreats for adults. And so I went to the Mass Conference UCC staff and I said, hey, what would you think about doing these retreats for adults? And they said, miraculously, sure, we'll support it, we'll sponsor it, we'll do these retreats. And I think even Sue and Carrie were at one of those first Filling Your Cup retreats, and it was really powerful and transformative. And I felt so blessed to be able to share my retreat ministry with the confirmation group last year. We went out to Beckett Chimney Corners YMCA camp out in Western Mass, and we had a confirmation retreat out there in the snow, but it was this powerful, transformative experience. And I feel like them, along with Jacqueline and Rich and Adam, who were there also, got a sense of why I love and am so passionate about retreats, because retreats create this sacred space where in community you can grow together spiritually in a way that we don't normally usually. And so it was kind of a surprise too when last spring I had a fellow pastor at a UCC church in Upton who contacted me and asked, hey, would you be willing to do this intergenerational church retreat for our church? Because I'm going on sabbatical, over the summer. I'm focused on Sabbath and Jubilee, and so when I come back, I want our whole church to go on a retreat, and I don't want to lead it. And so I said, yeah, that's a great idea. So we had this intergenerational church retreat last fall, and it was really an amazing and enjoyable time, not only because I was able to do it with Latoya, and usually we're separate when I'm leading retreats, so that was a really amazing part, but also just the depth of community connection that we felt and the depth of spiritual connection that we all felt. Even for me, who's not part of that Upton church community, wow. And so all throughout that retreat, let's find out if we could offer this ministry to other churches, wouldn't that be amazing? And so once again, I went to the Mass Conference staff and I said, hey, would you be willing or interested in this other retreat ministry for intergenerational church retreats? And they said, miraculously, sure. And so it's been amazing this year as the retreat ministry has begun to expand. And even earlier in 2013, some of the conference staff came up to me and they're interested in expanding the youth ministry of the conference. So they said, hey, would you be willing to pilot some youth retreats that are for youth, not focused on confirmation, but just for youth and youth groups from all around the conference. So next year we're going to pilot some youth retreats. And so that's amazing. And many of you know that since 2004, I've been on staff and I'm now one of the directors of an interfaith youth camp that we do every summer. So it feels like a great blessing that these retreats have continued to expand in both Christian and interfaith settings. But once I started to realize what that meant, I started to feel kind of a deep sense of grief. Because I knew that would mean I'd have to give something up. And I knew that because a lot of these retreats were on the weekend and even into Sunday, that I wouldn't be able to be here all the time. And so I felt this deep sense of grief. And Adam and I were talking on Friday, and he was asking me how I was feeling, and I really feel a deep sadness. But I think that sadness honors the amazing partnership and ministry that we've had together. Because I truly have felt blessed by all of you And at the same time, I've come to realize that I can't do everything, that I'm not Superman. And that's been a big lesson for me. Because, when we think of Jesus, oftentimes we think that he was this superhuman figure and he did everything. But in the gospel today, the whole town is searching for Jesus. And they want him to come talk more and heal more. And they say, everyone's been searching for you. And he tells his disciples, let's go to the next town. Because that's what I am called to do. Not just proclaim to one person or group of people, but to everybody. And so Jesus said no because he'd already said yes. He said no because he'd already said yes. And so that's why, though you probably feel a sadness as I do, I hope you feel an excitement for me as well going forward with these retreat ministries, because I do feel an excitement and a sadness. And I feel like I'm living into one of my favorite quotes from Howard Thurman when he says, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive." Say it again. Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. And so, friends, I pray that each of you also say yes to your calling, that you begin to discern and live out and take a gradual step forward towards your calling. I still haven't figured out my full calling. I'm taking one step closer. But I pray that each of us continue that process so that our hearts might sing in whatever we do. Because my heart has truly sung in ministry at Eliot Church these last 4 years. It has been an amazing, amazing blessing with you all. I feel so blessed to have been a part of this community. And so I will enjoy these last couple months that we have together. And I pray that each of you discern God's call in your life, and that you say yes to living out the life that makes you come alive. Amen.